Welcome to the Recovery Bros podcast. It's a weekly YouTube show where two guys in recovery, myself and Doug, translate addiction and mental health science into simple systems that young men can actually live through honest conversation, practical frameworks, and real world tools. So, what up, bro?
What's up, bro? It's good to see you.
How are you, man? I'm excited about today's episode. The the episode today is the blueprint for surviving the first 30 days. And this is a really important topic. And obviously, I'm talking about the first 30 days. If you're a person who's checked into a recovery rehab hospital, it would be the first 30 days out of rehab. Or if you're someone who's just like, I want to stop using marijuana every day. I want to stop drinking. I want to stop doing dumb stuff on the weekends just because this is your first 30 days. And I think that this is an important topic because I don't think it's talked about a lot, or I certainly haven't heard conversations about it. But man, I remember my first 30 days out of rehab, and what an experience that was.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I think the 30-day period is the make or break, right? And
Yeah,
there's this, I know we're going to talk about chaos today and we're going to talk about creating structure. And I think one of the big reasons that people fail in the first few months of recovery, it's not because they necessarily want to self-destruct or get high or whatever the case may be. It's because of the fact that they've been living a life full of chaos and full of unhealthy patterns, and they don't know how to recreate new pathways in their life. And I can remember, when I first got clean, I was super lucky to be in jail when I did that because it gave
here,
me
hang on a
this.
second. Hang on a second. Talk about you just said you were super lucky to be in jail, and I want to like from being on the other side of recovery, where you're now on the other side of the hill. You can say that really easily. But like the average person is listening, like, wait a minute, how in the world is being in jail lucky? So touch on that.
Well, what I was going to say is I think that when I went in, I didn't think it was going to be lucky. I was like, crap, my life's over. I'm going to, be taken advantage of. I'm going to get beat up. This sucks, like all the normal things. But it gave me this forced pause that I needed in my
Mm,
life. And it put me in like this pressure cooker, if you will, and to where I was forced to deal with my emotions, my life, everything kind of head on. And so I got used to dealing with the chaos that exists within recovery pretty quickly. And in a
yeah,
way where I had a mentor right away and my cellmate, in a way that I had some tools that I developed, like working out and the way I treated myself, to where it helped rewire my brain to have these healthy patterns that I didn't have before. And that's why I think
yeah,
I was super lucky because a lot of people don't have that opportunity where they're in a place where they're forced to get help. Otherwise, their life's in jeopardy.
yeah. And you said it earlier, chaos. We're going to talk about chaos, and we're going to talk about order because I think if you really think about it, the first 30 days of trying to stop using, that is like the ultimate battle between order and chaos. And chaos isn't some abstract thing. It's a place where everything you knew about yourself falls apart. Your relationships, your routines, your reason to get up in the morning, it all just collapses. And there's no sense of how you're ever going to be able to put it back together or that there ever will be a time when you wake up and the world does make sense. It does feel safe. It does feel hopeful. And it's like and you kind of touched on it when you said, my gosh, like I feel like my life's over. I'm going to like how more chaotic can that be?
Yeah. And I think that the idea that chaos is bad, I think also plays a part into this too. Because, like, listen, like if you were abusing drugs, for a long time and your life wasn't a mess, I mean, there'd be kind of something like kind of off with
Hmm.
that, right?
Yeah,
And then when you get into recovery, and if you're feeling like a little off, if you're not feeling off, and you're feeling like a little, if you're not feeling like confused or where's the path forward, then things would be a little off. So I think chaos can be good. I think the
yeah,
problem is you can't stay in it too long. Otherwise, it becomes a
exactly.
problem because in chaos, you figure out what the problem is. You figure out how can I solve this? How can I grow? How can I get better? You need that friction, you know?
Dude, that is such a good point because it's in those moments of overwhelming chaos you get a sense of what you will either decide to say no to or continue to live in. And how are you going to create order out of all of that? And order isn't something that's just handed to you. It's what you build day by day when you decide to take responsibility for your own life. Like the first 30 days of recovery, that's you standing like on the edge of order and chaos, standing between those two things every single day and choosing which direction are you going to go? Are you going to go this direction or are you going to go this direction? So before we get into anything else, like I just want to ask, I know you kind of mentioned earlier, like what did life actually look like on day one for you?
Day one of jail, or I mean, I'll do it both
Just,
ways. So day one of
yeah.
jail, I was detoxing cold turkey from OxyContin and
Oh,
it was hell. And I was so nervous because when I went to jail, I don't know if anybody's ever been to jail or gone to the detention center where I was. You're not like in a cell, so to speak, your first day. You're in the bullpen where you're in there with other people that are waiting to be booked or other people that haven't been assigned a room. And then you're kind of in general population. And so I was in a spot where I'm feeling sick, I'm feeling ill. You're having to go to the bathroom in front of a bunch of other grown men, which is it's embarrassing. It's really odd. And then people are like, oh my God, like there's fights every Friday night. I mean, everybody was kind of saying what was going to happen. I was like, oh my God, I am going to get the freaking crap beaten out of me. Cause I was like, blacked out, zombie, still like coming off the oxy. So that was day one. And thankfully, I got transported to a pod that had some people in it that didn't mess with me and blah, blah, blah. And that's where I met my cellmate.
man.
But day one of getting out of jail, it was really tough. It was tough because I had been in this controlled environment for a few months where I had everything done for me. And then I had this guy who came in and helped me. And then I was like, all right, how am I going to survive without him? And so that to me was the toughest part. I mean, I didn't really have cravings. I didn't have any intention of going back because I had been fortunate enough in jail to transform my life so much that when I got out, I had that motivation, that fuel at the beginning to not want to look back.
Dude, so much of what you're talking about, like, I mean, while I wasn't in jail, like I had all the same feelings. I checked into a rehab hospital 2 weeks after I suffered an drug overdose from an intentional drug overdose. And I spent 37 days in this rehab hospital. It was a total cliche. I was like, I'm just going to get a handle on this, take a break from using, go home, use better. And then there was this moment about 4 days before I was supposed to leave where they were like, no, you're not done. You're going to go into a sober living facility and you're going to live there for at least 90 days. I was like, nah, dude, no. Anyways, they convinced me that it was a good idea to at least go and try 30 days. So I show up to this place, and just like you said, all of the structure that had been built in to my life in the rehab hospital, breakfast made every day, lunch made every day, dinner made every day. They make your bed. Laundry's no problem. Your schedule is decided. All that stuff was gone. Now I had to organize my life in a house with 12 guys who had very different intentions on what they were going to do. And I was freaking pissed. I didn't want to have to do this. I didn't want to have to take responsibility for the collapse of my life. And I remember that feeling of having these moments where it's like, am I actually going to decide to go forward and do this incredibly heavy, difficult thing? Or am I going to turn and run? And the only reason I would turn and run is because it would be if I decided I was a coward. And that's just how I felt. And so I thankfully stayed. But like, we're not here to tell people that it gets easy, like, or that it gets harder. I think what you and I want to do is we want to give people a blueprint to help them build order into their life. So first, like, let's face the facts. Like, guys, men out there, we have a problem. We want to start with something uncomfortable because that's where all this conversation begins. But like, there is a real difference between the way men struggle with mental health and addiction and the way women struggle with mental health and addiction as a population. And I like that in Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, he has a chapter, tell the truth or at least don't lie. And the statistics about men and addiction and mental health, they are the truth and they're brutal. So like, here's what the data shows. 11.5% of men and boys under the age of 12 have substance use disorder. That's nearly double the rate for women and girls. Over 6 million men in the United States experience depression annually, but it often goes undiagnosed. Men are 4 times more likely to die of suicide than women, 4 times. According to the American Psychological Association, men are 30% less likely than women to seek mental health treatment, and men make up the majority of people inside addiction treatment programs, yet we are less likely to voluntarily seek help early. By the time most men walk through those doors, the addiction has progressed to a much more severe stage than when most women check into treatment. Those numbers aren't there to like make you feel like a statistic. They're there to show you the map. Because here's the thing: if you can't navigate a map, you can't navigate a map that you refuse to open. And I think it's good that we look at those, because I think that there's a reason why you see those numbers. I think that men are, I think it's that devastating for men specifically because not that we're weaker or more easily broken from a mental health perspective or addiction, but that we're taught culturally, socially, and even in our own nature that concealment of struggle is the same as strength. Shut it down, handle your business, walk it off, don't let them see you crack. And that mindset is a big problem, and I think it's killing us.
I totally agree. I mean, I think that we've done men a disservice in saying that we can process the same way as women do. And I've had multiple experts on my show to talk about the differences there and why it's important. I think men need to feel like sense of achievement, sense of accomplishment. I think they need to process their emotions, but in ways that they're feeling productive and feeling like they're prideful and they can kind of feed their ego. I think physical fitness is incredibly important, which I'm sure we're going to talk about as far as how to survive the first 30
Oh
days
yeah,
here. But
yeah, and you're right though. We do experience it differently. And that's not about putting one above the other. It's not a hierarchy. It's biology. It's psychology. It's just reality. And ignoring it and saying that we're all the same, it just ends up not only costing everyone, but it certainly costs young men enormously in recovery spaces that were built on a one size fits all model that often wasn't designed with each unique individual in mind.
yeah, and I think that men have to just understand that they have to take a different path than they've been doing before, and that you have to find a way to process your emotions in a healthy way. And you're not going to get all the answers from one video, but I do think that once you can understand that you don't need to hold everything in, and you can process it through fitness, through talking to somebody, through having a great community of people, instead of hiding it and holding it down and suppressing it. Because when you suppress it, I mean, it just festers and it eats away at you and eats away at you, and you don't even notice it. And it's like a week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, 3 months goes by, and then you're miserable and you don't know why. And then you end up turning to things like addiction, or when you get out. And this is something that I think doesn't get talked about enough. Is this recovery sucks
Yeah,
early on, dude, and it's
it
really
does.
hard. And we need to acknowledge that it's not
Yeah.
easy. And if you're not careful, you'll fall into the trap of going back because you don't have the awareness around what's tough. It's tough because you take away the solution to someone's problem that they've been using forever. And
Mhm.
here's the other part. When people are getting into recovery, it's not like they're at the top of their life. There's something that dramatically happened. You talked about for yourself, it was like a near
Yeah.
suicide attempt. For
Yeah.
me, it was going to jail. So there's a low level of self-confidence there. Then you take away the solution to the pain. Now you're left with somebody who's incredibly broken, unsure of what they're going to do and how to solve all of that, existing stuff they have. So it's so important to like look at that stuff head on.
Yeah, and the thing is that you're at a pretty low point in your life when you check in. When they take your drugs away from you, the next day you feel worse.
Yeah.
And the next day you feel worse. And you're like, hang on a second. How do I feel like my life is in greater debt now that I've stopped using? Like, and I don't see a horizon where this gets better. That's like the big part of the thing that I think is a barrier for people. It's like on day one, two, three, you can't look forward in your life and go, oh, it's going to be day 12 when this thing starts feeling better. You can't see it at all. And that's why so many people are like, when you get in recovery, do the 90 meetings in 90 days, just be around people in recovery every single day. But it was interesting. I was looking at some research, and it turns out that men tend to turn to substances for different reasons than women do. And I think this is interesting. They turn to substances to improve their mood, to cope with behavioral and social problems like pressure at work, a conflict they can't resolve, feeling humiliated in the hierarchy of their own life. Women, on the other hand, more often self-medicate for emotional and psychological pain like trauma, anxiety, and relational distress.
Mm.
And I think that it's an interesting contrast. The other thing is I found out, read this data that men possess a higher concentration of dopamine receptors. That matters because dopamine isn't just a reward chemical. It's the molecule of pursuit, motivation, direction. It's what drives us towards status, achievement, completion, competition. And when you're, like you said, when you're at the bottom, when your life feels like it's falling apart, when your brain is like screaming for a shortcut and they take that shortcut away from you, something that was like giving you a sense of not just relief, but was flooding your brain with the actual molecules that signal to your psychology that not only are you safe, you're successful. That is a trap. That's the days when you go, there's no way I'm going to make it.
Well, I think you brought up a really good point because one of the experts I had talked to, we were talking about like men and like why modern therapy for men essentially sucks. And not that
Yeah.
therapy sucks as a whole, but just the approach at times. And the reason is this: it's because of what you just said and the way that men process things versus women. And that's why I think when men, if they could do something like a 5K or a Tough Mudder or something where they feel this sense of accomplishment, where they've had to put in a lot of work and discipline to get there, like why that can be so meaningful for them as far as like their healing. And the other thing I'll say is that as we're talking about how to survive the first 30 days, like reality hits, like life has to go on. I think when I say this because I think when people are in the thick of addiction, life becomes so much about them and their problems that they forget they still have to go to work. They still have to like navigate family stuff. They still have to show up. You can't just put your life on hold forever just because you couldn't handle your stuff, right? And I think this is important because as you're bringing up the reason why men turn to substances, okay, let's they get out of rehab or they're like, hey, I quit drugs or whatever. First 30 days, they're back to work. Now problems come up. Now stress. Now maybe, your boss doesn't give you the raise, or maybe you're not getting the recognition you deserve, or maybe you have an altercation or you get a bad email. Now what?
Or maybe you're not able to complete the project you really want to complete, and it's difficult, and you feel inferior.
Yeah, so it's like, then what do? I mean, you can't use drugs. You can't go and drink if that was your thing. So you have to have a framework. I think and I think it doesn't have to be this difficult thing that you have for the rest of your life, because I think the frameworks are helpful to get people started and get you back into good habits. And then once they become habits, it's like second nature. Like I'm not looking at my day or my week and being like, all right, what do I have to do this week to become the best version of myself? It's like, all right, I just subconsciously know I better get my butt to the gym. I better do this. You know what I mean? It's just, it's already there.
The thing is, like, the part of you that would have developed the capacity to tolerate all those social distress, all that personal distress, was never developed because you started using. And so now, in the absence of that use, that part of you has to now train for the first time. And it's like, well, this is difficult.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, you talked about it, is when you look at relapse rates within the first 12 weeks following an intensive inpatient treatment, it's usually like 50%. Men are higher risk for that than women, but the research shows that like once men genuinely commit to some kind of goal that exists inside of their recovery, meaning not just being sober, but some kind of goal, they often clear recovery obstacles faster. They have greater reductions in barriers to recovery than women. And I think that speaks to something you talked about, which is like, find something that you can get up and do. Like for you and I, it was fitness and nutrition. Find something that you can get up and aim at, that is a goal that you could accomplish, that you would want to accomplish, that also moves you through your day without using.
Well, that's why fitness is so powerful, and you don't have to be a bodybuilder or an ultra runner, to start necessarily, right? I think what
Yeah,
fitness
yeah.
does
I sure
is
wasn't.
right, and but it gets you it gets you back on a moving target and something you can look towards the future. And I think that it's good for a couple of reasons. One, we talked in our first episode about, you got to become somebody that doesn't want to use drugs anymore, doesn't need to use drugs. So when you work out, that helps with identity shifting, right? When you
Mhm.
work out, it also keeps you focused on the future, so you're not as looking at the past as much as all your mistakes and the failures and all those things. And then fitness
Yeah,
also
because
forces, yeah,
working out is a future oriented effort.
yeah, you're like shooting towards the future. You're like, all right, I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to run this fast or whatever. And then on top of that, you are learning to pursue something, a goal that's tough, that doesn't come easy, sit in discomfort. And then the community aspect. I mean, I think if you look at men that I've talked to that have been in recovery for a long time, the number one thing that they will say that's helped them is the community. And it doesn't matter if they get that from AA, NA, church, fitness, like whatever. Community is like the number one thing because you have this support group that you can lean on, that you can talk to. I mean, I think the idea that men shouldn't open up about their emotions, I think is total BS. I think what that means is, I think that men just shouldn't. I think people in general like shouldn't complain because complaining is a turnoff, no matter if who you are, right? But men should
Yeah,
find a way to process their emotions and talk to people in their
it's
circle.
it's interesting you brought that up because there was a study that was done looking at why talk therapy, like group therapy, in a circle of chairs with everyone facing each other. Why is it that when you put a circle of chairs together and you fill it with women in therapy, they immediately start talking about their issues and their problems? When you do it with just men, they sat there in silence and almost never talk about anything. And this uh, psychosocial researcher, this psychologist, said, "I have an idea." He invited all these a group of men to a space, and in the middle of the room there was a lawnmower engine that needed to be repaired, and
Wow.
there were tools around, and they all started working on it. And within 10 minutes, they were all sharing about their problems and asking for support from each other. And it turns so I guess what it turns out is that when you can demonstrate competence and capacity and ability and show that there's nothing taken from you. Look, I'm a capable individual. I have agency in my life. I can do things that are valuable. All of a sudden we're now willing to share. And I think that's really important when you talk about the distinction.
Yeah, I mean, you got to find what works for specific groups, right? Because I think it is different for who people are, and I think it is just naturally women. I mean, easier for women to open up and share for a variety of reasons, and then also including societal stuff that's put on men as far as not opening up. But I do think that but I think there's a lot of like, you see a lot of like negative rhetoric out there too. That's like, all right, well, if you open up to your partner, they'll lose respect for you or whatever.
Right.
And I think that's a very general thing. And I think it's like, honestly, there's so much nuance to it. It's just why I really don't like that statement. I think it can be true if you're on like on a first date with someone and the first thing you say is like, oh my God, like my dad, this or and you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then they're like, oh God, why are you dumping on me? I don't even know you. Right.
Well,
Or
you
you're right.
you touched on it earlier. Like, don't complain.
Right.
In this situation, if you're talking to your partner about things in your life that are difficult, if you're complaining about it, that doesn't look like someone who's seeking change. If you come to your partner and say, I have these things in my life that are difficult and I just want to talk to you about them, that's a very different perspective.
It is. And I think that it's action oriented, it's future oriented. It's saying I can get through this hard time. It's acknowledging it because I think that life can be challenging sometimes, and it's like people have respect for people that have been through stuff and your ability to problem solve. But
Well, I
yeah,
think we're going to add another. We said three. We're going to give everyone three things to do on this podcast episode for the first 30 days. There's going to be a fourth. And that one is don't complain.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so let's talk about like the nuts and bolts of what you think
Yeah.
are the best things people can do to survive the first 30 days.
So funny when I first checked into sober living, I was being shown around the sober living house by the house manager, and he said something to me that I never forgot. He said, "When you get up in the morning, Adam, you're going to make your bed, and trust me, you want to." And I was like, "What? Whatever. I mean, fine, I guess." I did not want to make my bed. I thought this was like kind of a like he was being snarky or something. I didn't understand, but I found out pretty quickly that why that's important. Um, Turns out that the the our brains are at their core, they're predictive engines. They're trying to think about where in the chaos of the day ahead can they find any kind of predictability and pattern that allows them to better compete with or against whatever's coming. And when you have rituals, when you have routines that have become ritualized into your day that set order into something that looks like chaos, that creates a sense of I know where things are, I know how things are done, I get things moving, and it creates competence, that it actually lowers your amygdala activation, it reduces cortisol, and it increases problem solving capacity. So in fact, being told to get up every day and the first thing I would do is make my bed was the first time anyone taught me about the value of rituals and anchors that would allow me to finally start reducing the overall anxiety that I had about recovery. Because it was like, I get up, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen today. I got to go to IOP,
Mm-hmm.
5 group therapy sessions. I don't know what these guys are going to talk about. I don't know if anyone in the house is going to have a fight. I don't know. It's just a bunch of chaos. I don't know what to do, but I know I'm making my bed. I know I'm eating a healthy breakfast. I know I'm eating a healthy lunch. I know I'm going to gym after IOP. I know I'm coming back. I know I'm doing the dishes and I'm going to bed. It's like those things became opportunities for me to calm myself down. And so I always say, move number one, clean your room, literally. Clean your room every day. There's an interesting thing that I have found since being in sober living. I had so many chores that we had to do. A lot of it was cleaning. Now, when I feel overwhelmed, I clean a room, and it's like an immediate relief.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like the idea of anchoring small habits that you can stack. I mean, over time, and I think the making the bed thing is really important. We had to do that when we were in jail. Like we would be in like trouble if our beds weren't made. And I think the reason that's important is, I mean, it's just a sign of self respect, structure, pride, all the things. That was like a rule that when I got out of jail, I lived with my grandparents, which was really helpful, by the way. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And one of their main rules was that I was going to have to take care of my room, keep it clean. I wasn't going to live like a slob anymore. Um, and I think that, I mean, obviously, I think keeping things tidy and clean is important. You know, I think that over time, you may find it's not as important than it may have been when you first got started. And the reason I say that is I think when, especially at the beginning, it's a great way to build momentum because
Mm-hmm.
when you're at the bottom, you have essentially no momentum. So like, what's a promise you can keep to yourself and do when you don't have a lot going for you? Well, you can make your bed, you can keep your room straight. That's a good
Yeah,
thing to build structure off of. I know, I think going back to the fitness thing, I think that fitness needs to be a staple. Um,
absolutely.
because for the reasons that we talked about a few minutes ago, and also because there needs to be some level of recalibration for your mind. And I don't know. I wish I had the background to explain the exact neuroscience of what happens like in the mind of what specifically what drugs do on an in-depth basis, and then how fitness can help that. But the reality is, on a basic level, fitness helps you improve the way you manage your emotions. It's a fact. It helps you with your
Oh,
stress, helps you with sleep,
yeah.
helps you with the way you feel about yourself, gives you structure, like we've said. And so you need to find a program that works for you. And like, I'm not going to get into in depth on like specifics. I will say generally, like if you can just get like 5 to 7,000 steps a day in, and then like lift weights like 2 days a week, I mean, you're going to be pretty good. And then obviously, if you are already experienced or you're already like doing something, then it's a different conversation because you're wanting to add to what you're doing. But if you haven't done anything in like years, trying to get a few thousand steps in every day or taking like a 10-minute walk like once or twice a day, and then trying to lift weights a few days a week, and then trying to clean up your diet to the point where maybe you're eating healthy like 50% of the time compared to like 10% of the time or whatever, I mean, I think you're going to feel really good.
Well, dude, you hit it on the head. When I say clean your room, I really mean like the entire routine of your life. Establish a routine, like get things going, create a structure that will move you through your day. It's interesting, the modern like so our modern world is basically defined by uncertainty. Like it's just a bunch of pings and posts and notifications pulling our attention. Our nervous systems were never designed to process that level of unpredictability. And from a neurological standpoint, unpredictability is chaos, and
Hmm.
it activates the brain's threat circuits, flooding you with cortisol and narrowing your focus towards threats and distractions. And so rituals interrupt that loop. They offer predictability where there would otherwise be none. If you know you're going to the gym at 3 p.m. every single day, 3 p.m. every single day feels safe. When you repeat a behavior at the same time in the same way, your brain begins to anticipate safety. And that anticipation reduces the gap between what you expect and what you experience. And when what you expect and what you experience tend to be the same, you feel safe. There's some remarkable research on this. But if you think about it, our human ancestors, we didn't survive, 100,000 years ago because we were the fastest or the strongest animals on the planet by any stretch of imagination. We survived because we figured out how to create predictable patterns in a world of unbelievable chaos. We rose with the sun, we slept with the stars, we gathered at night and told stories, we hunted together, we gathered together. That kind of rhythm that we created was the weapon against the exhaustion of chaos. And we can do that in recovery when you're first getting into it. Clean your room in the morning, make a healthy meal, go to your therapy sessions, come home, go to the gym, go for a walk, talk to a friend, come back, make and clean yourself up. And those are the anchors that move you through your day.
When it comes back to like essentially we're covering the second point, which is the theme of it is to treat yourself like you're somebody that's worth saving, right? And this all comes back to taking pride in yourself, like being proud of who you are. And that can be like hygiene. Like, I mean, I know
Yeah,
sometimes like when people were in the depths of addiction, they're like not showering regularly, they're not brushing their teeth regularly. Like, get back in the routine of showering every day and
dude.
brushing your teeth and taking care of yourself and getting like some new cologne or getting new clothes so that when you go to the gym, you look
Yeah,
good, right? It's like
yeah.
take care of your appearance because that's, I mean, I think appearance gets a bad rap for, I mean, there's reasons why, but I think your appearance still matters. Like if you go show up to a job interview looking like crap, I mean, there's a good chance you're not going to get the job interview, right?
Well, absolutely. And I think number two in this list is to treat yourself like someone worth saving. Keep yourself clean, dress yourself nice. Why? For no other reason than you deserve it, right? Look good when you get up in the morning. Present yourself to the world in a way that says, I have respect for myself. And you may not believe it yet, but the act of doing it will be far more valuable at getting you to believe it than some affirmation you're going to shout in the mirror. I heard there's a comedian named Jimmy Carr,
He's funny.
and he's hilarious. And he said, he has a great quote. He said, um, self confidence or self esteem is not built by shouting affirmations in the mirror. It's by giving the world undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. And I think that's a great quote. And if you don't believe it, if you keep doing the thing, if you keep giving the world evidence that you are someone who's worthy of respect, that is presentable, you'll believe it.
Yeah. And there's so many great, I mean, tools out there to help you. I mean, just find ways to dress better or find ways to clean yourself up better or whatever. But I think the thing that I think can be the biggest bang for the buck is fitness. You know, I think that I did a solo episode. I recorded it yesterday, and I was talking about like I get questions a lot like how do I get a girlfriend? And it's like, well, I mean, if you're a guy who's like obese, and addicted to drugs, mental health issues, not taking care of yourself, it's gonna be pretty hard to probably get a girlfriend because now you've lowered your mate value in the pool, right? And it's just the facts.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate that I mean, that people get judged based on their appearance, but that's just the way it unfortunately is, especially with dating apps now, right?
Well,
And
I
I
mean,
think people
yeah.
value people that take care of themselves. I think that if I were to like say, why are people attracted to people that are fit? It's because of the price that that person had to pay to get there. That's what they're attracted to.
And there's also an evolutionary psychology aspect to it as well. If you're fit and strong, you're capable. If you're capable, you're someone who could keep that woman would see you as someone who could keep you safe or keep them safe and also provide for you. It also signifies health, which means you're more likely to be able to reproduce. So there's an actual nature in you, an evolutionary mechanism that when you see someone who's fit and strong and healthy and capable, you have an immediate attraction to them. And it's not because of some societal stereotype. It's in your nature.
It is. So I think that's why it's important to like to really pay attention to your fitness if you're trying to improve the way you appear, the way you feel about yourself. Because again, like if you're like 50% body fat or whatever, then you drop yourself down to 30. Well, now we're talking a little bit, right? Then you go from 30 to 20. Now we're you're in the like the a good a decent level of health, and then like you take it to the next level, and then you're like 15%. And now you're in the game, right? And I think that on top of that, building some muscle, like making sure that your clothes fit you properly, I think all of that is going to play into the bigger picture of improving your self confidence, becoming somebody that's worth saving, like we've said, have you more likely to get a job, to get a girlfriend, to feel good about yourself. Like we're just talking about these things that over time are going to pay dividends. It's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to go from 50% body fat to 15 in a month, but you know, if you commit for the first 30 days, I mean, I guarantee you'll see some significant changes that will build some serious momentum.
And there's actual real evidence behind this. So there's strong evidence around neuroplasticity and that exercise promotes something called brain derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which supports the growth of new neurons and synaptic connections. And so the aerobic exercise was one of the ones that they mostly studied. About 150 minutes per week appeared to be the best supported modality from research perspective. However, resistance training also shows similar benefits, especially for anxiety and stress regulation. So those are not small things when you're in the first 30 days of recovery. Stress regulation and reduce anxiety. This is a remarkable benefit. And even you don't have to do 150 minutes a week of intense cardio, but it's just talking about the benefit of physically training, challenging yourself to do something that pushes your body to a point of what we would call failure, physical or psychological failure, where you just don't think you can do one more, and then you try.
Yeah, and I think it goes into our third thing, which is like you got to find a goal and a target to aim at. And
Exactly.
I think all these things they all go hand in hand together to create the big pie, right? These are just slices we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about that all add up. And I think you got to find some goals. And I think the reason that people fail on like New Year's resolutions, for instance, is because they try to have that New Year's resolution energy like the entire year, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, doesn't work.
So, and the same thing happens in recovery. People often will be like, "I'm going to change my entire life in 30 days." Can that happen? I mean, you can significantly change in 30 days. Yes, your
Yeah,
entire life. I mean, that's a bit of a stretch. I think that the way to do so, though, is you have to find out what matters. And so the goals could be something like for me, it would be like, why don't making like a new positive friend in your life, like finding somebody in your corner that you can
that's a
have
great one.
that is solid. It could be going to church once a month. It could be, and I'm just
It's a good
throwing
one.
random things out that
Yeah,
are gonna maybe move the needle. It could be joining a gym and going once a week. It could be hiring a coach. I mean, these are just very small things that could move the needle, moving forward because it's going to help you build momentum. If you go to church once a month, you might find out, oh, like, I used to go, I enjoyed it. Now I really like it again. I'm going to go next week. Or I met a friend there. Or maybe I'm going to get involved in like a Bible study or whatever. The same thing
yeah.
with fitness. I mean, there's these lies that exist on the internet that and in that I think are well intentioned, but I think what happens is people assume, okay, when I want to change my life, that means I need to go to the gym 5 days a week. I gotta like eat clean 97.8% of the time. I
Squat
gotta
till
like
I vomit program.
yeah, I gotta meditate for 3 hours a day. I gotta like, play with like 6 dogs. I got to do all these things. And it's like, no, if you're starting from 0, you got to get to 1. And what does that look like for you?
Dude, I want to show you, like, let's talk about what was our one worthy aim when we first got into our first 30 days. Um, and I know for me, I was still over 320 pounds at the time. I had advanced type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. I was, you know, physically, life really hurt. And I came to this conclusion that I could spend all day trying to not use. And at the end of not using, my life would still be just as difficult. So my one aim was, what if I could reverse engineer health? What if I could figure out how to reverse those conditions? If I could aim for that target, using would be less necessary. Using would not be a part of it. It couldn't exist. So every single day I got up and my aim was make the healthiest meal that I possibly could with what I had and with enough ease and repeatability. Move my body as much as I could with ease and repeatability and do it in a way that's interesting enough. See, the thing is, like, if my goal was I just want to never use again, well, that doesn't really give me a sense that there's a future that feels secure and hopeful that I'm orienting that effort around. So when things get difficult, when not using is hard, everything's just going to collapse into the weight of its difficulty. It's pointless. But when my aim is restore health, reverse diabetes and heart disease, all of a sudden the struggles that I had around not using, they didn't disappear. They're just not pointless anymore. There's a direction and a purpose for why I don't want to use. And that made a big difference. And it's still like part of my life today is still instilling all the choices that I made then, doing them well, because I want 90 to look as good as it possibly can. Like, what was your first aim? I know it was fitness, but like talk about it.
Well, I think there's a couple things to unpack with what you said. I think it's really good to have something you're shooting towards that's bigger than you, right? That's why the idea of having meaning and purpose is so powerful. I mean, I think if anyone wants to learn more about this, everybody I think needs to read Man's Search for Meaning. It's like one of the
Oh yeah,
greatest
Viktor
books,
Frankl.
one of the greatest books ever written.
Hmm.
That being said, I do think that you have to be kind of specific ish because I think sometimes when you're like, oh, I just want to stay sober for the rest of my life, or I want
Yeah,
to,
that's not specific at
it's
all.
it's
Yeah.
not. It's like, what does that mean? And how are you going to get there? For
Doug
me,
Lyle describes that as a passive recovery program.
yeah.
There's no active choice for anything.
Yeah. So for me, fitness was a huge part of it. I think if I look back now, I was like, all right, well, what was the worthy aim that I had? It was just not going back to jail. Like I knew that I needed to just do what I could on a daily basis, not go back to jail, not embarrass myself, not be a career criminal. And that took a lot of work. I mean, there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears of getting to that goal. And I think this is an important point because, a lot of people will quit when things get difficult. And you have to develop this whatever it takes mentality. Like I was so committed to not going back to jail on the days it got tough. I was like, all right, well, I'm not going back to jail, so I can't do this. All right, like I'm not going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And the way that I did that, and this is the way it worked for me, was I knew that if I stayed away from certain people, if I didn't abuse drugs, if I worked out, if I ate decent, if I moved my body, then it gave me a chance to be better the next day. And then the next day I did the same thing. And then those things compounded and those like small aims, if you will, became a big aim that like 3 months go by and it's like, holy crap, my life is dramatically different. Like I think
But
that,
those
you know what I mean?
those weren't small aims at all. Like, to say I'm not going to go to jail today is not a small aim. And it's like you were really clear that you didn't want to go that direction. And so talk about what are the things you did day to day that you're like, instead of going to jail, I'm going to do this because this is what the life I want looks like. What was it in those first 30 days? Like, what was your thing? I know fitness, but like, what else?
Fitness, it was being honest with myself.
Telling
It
the truth.
telling the
Yeah,
truth. It was standing up for myself. I think that was a huge thing because I was a people pleaser. I was trying to fit in with everybody and
yeah,
everything when I was growing up.
same.
And so I didn't cut out my friends immediately because they were my friends and it was like now you're going to tell me I got to give up everything unhealthy in my life, and then I got to like have no social life. But what I got lucky that I just became really confident. And so I wasn't tempted to do anything that my friends were doing. I could sit there and I could do my own thing. I could eat my chicken and broccoli while they were doing their thing. And that was a huge game changer for me because it taught me that I have power. I have control. There's choice. Because I was blaming my friends and people around me for everything when I was growing up. So that was a big thing, was the ability to stand up for myself and not make decisions just because other people were doing so. The other thing was, um, I mean, it was just about this belief in my future self and who I wanted to
Oh,
become,
yeah.
and that leveraging that pain in my life. To, I mean, Patrick Bet David, he has this book called Choose Your Enemies Wisely. And I really identify with that. And I identify with it because it's like, he says the idea essentially, like, if you have someone that tells you like it is, that's a good friend that holds you accountable, people will see them as their enemy, but it's really, that's your ally. Like, my enemy was my old self. Like, I wanted to defeat that person every day. And
Well, also, I'd say choosing your enemies wisely. If you can identify what your enemies really are, that's a clear statement about what you don't want to be in life.
yeah,
It's like, well, then those behaviors are not the life I want to live. That those it becomes a clear representation of what your moral standards are. And early in recovery, if you can find someone that you can kind of idolize and go, well, that looks like example of manhood that I would like to follow. Like for me early on, it was Rich Roll. It was there was a guy named Rip Esselstyn, who helped me out, and these were very powerful, assertive, confident men. Rich, who has a recovery story, I was like, wow, if I could emulate 10% of that, oh my gosh, let me do as much of that as I can, because that's the opposite of my old self. My old self is my enemy.
yeah, that's exactly how I viewed things. And then, I mean, this could be a different story for another day, but that became a problem for me because then when I would go, like when I got super healthy and I wasn't eating like any processed foods, I was afraid to eat a slice of pizza because I was like, if I'm eating a slice of pizza, does this mean that I'm moving a step back towards my old
Oh,
self?
yeah, yeah,
You know?
dude. I was like, I remember within the first like 6 weeks, I wanted to have a cheat day so bad, and I was like, I can't, because cheating is wrong, and that means I'm relapsing, because these are things that are destructive to my health, and I had to come to terms with, okay, well, what is there anything? Is this really cheating, or would this be a choice? And if it was a choice made with intention and it was done well, could I, have healthy one slice of veggie supreme pizza when everyone's watching Game of Thrones, instead of the pepperoni meat supreme, one slice a week. That's never going to be the thing that derails my health. It's like I was so afraid,
Yeah.
and it's like sometimes you got to step into that arena and do the thing and go, oh, I'm far less fragile than I thought.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and because I think part of that is growth, right? I think that
Hmm.
part of being able to walk that fine line. And it's not to say that, I mean, I'm not encouraging anyone to like go back and engage in behaviors that are illegal or harmful for their health. What I am saying is that there needs to be this idea of sanity in your life.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
it comes to health and fitness specifically, I'll talk about it in that way, because otherwise you will drive yourself crazy. You'll be lonely. You'll be miserable. Um, I think that addicts have black or white thinking, so it's hard to like make that shift. And sometimes you see,
Hmm.
people take it to the far extreme and they become orthorexic. I was in that camp for a while, which you
Yeah,
don't want to be in,
I was as well.
because it's like, is one slice of pizza gonna raise your blood pressure? I mean, maybe in the short term, but like for
Yeah.
but long term, if you eat a whole pizza every week, well, I don't know. I mean, it's like it all depends, and I think that it's just about like, how are you living your life? Are you working out? Are you eating good 80% of the time, like generally speaking? And if you are, then that other stuff isn't going to matter.
Get up, make your bed, put your room in order, have a plan for the day, organize around healthy eating, fitness, community, recovery. If you do that, that is those are the one, two, threes that you can start doing right now. I think we should close by speaking directly to any of the guys out there who are listening to this.
Yeah.
Maybe you're in your car, maybe you're lying in bed, maybe you're white knuckling it through another day and you clicked on this because something in you is looking for a reason to keep going. Here's what we want you to know. You already know something has to change. You wouldn't be in the situation you're in if you didn't know and you didn't have something that you need to change. Knowledge is already there. The awareness is there. Question is it's never whether you know, it's whether you're going to decide to finally act.
Mm.
And if you don't have to act on, well, I'd say you don't have to act on everything today. You fix what's directly in front of you. Make your bed, clean your room, eat healthy, go to the gym, call your friends. The smallest kind of insignificant things possible. You do that and it will change everything over the course of time.
I agree. I think that for me, if I'm speaking to that guy, it's that you got to have compassion for yourself for why you're in the situation. And you also need to say, okay, like the only way for me to get better and to feel better is to change my behavior, is to change my habits. And I need to find whatever I can reach for. It's the low hanging fruit to find these wins. And that's why making your bed, keeping your place in order, focusing on the small wins with fitness and community
Don't complain.
Don't complain. It's all important. And like if you're watching this, that means that you're wanting to get help, you're wanting to change, and just don't lose hope. But man, this has been awesome. Like I've loved this, how action oriented this was. I think that this is going to be a great framework, hopefully, for people to survive the first 30 days.
One thing I can say, Doug and I can guarantee you that Doug agrees with me on this. To that person who doesn't believe that it's possible, not believing that it's possible is exactly how everyone who made it felt on day one.
Totally.
Trust me.
Yeah.
You have no idea what you're capable of. So this was a great conversation. For those of you who listen, thank you for listening. Please comment below. Let us know what you're going through. Let us know what you're doing. We're going to be here every week. And Recovery Bros podcast is made for you. If you're a guy trying to change your life, trying to take charge, and you want to have someone that you could listen to, a conversation that could fill the time and inspire you. This is the conversations we wish we could have listened to when we were early on. We made it for you.
Amen, man. I appreciate you. This has been a great episode. And just remember, if you're listening to this or watching this, you're not alone. Like reach out, ask for help. You're a lot closer than you think you are to changing your life.
Peace.